Good evening. I'm Gyuk Shin, Director of the Shorenstein Asia Pacific Research Center at Stanford. It's really my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2021 Shorenstein Journalism Award ceremony. This is our 20th annual award celebration and the second virtual ceremony in the COVID era. Thanks to everyone who has joined us online, both old friends and new acquaintances from the United States and abroad, especially from Asia, including Myanmar. We established these journalism awards to honor the legacy of our benefactor and mentor, Mr. Walter H. Shorenstein, and his twin passions, promoting excellence in journalism and understanding of Asia. Of the many APARC events Walter hosted and attended in his lifetime, the Journalism Award ceremonies were established, especially dear to his heart. We miss him greatly and also grateful for the continued support of the Shorenstein family. Okay, this award recognizes accomplished journalists who have contributed to greater understanding of the complexities of Asia. Since 2011, the award has alternated between recipients whose work has mostly been conveyed through American news media and recipients affiliated primarily with Asian news media. Okay, those in the latter category, in addition to their journalistic excellence, often work on the front lines of the battle to defend press freedom in their own countries. Our press awardees include many excellent journalists and defenders of press freedom. And I'm very happy to say that our recipient 2 years ago, Maria Ressa, she won a Nobel Peace Prize this year. So Maria, really congratulations. Also, our recipients include Aung Zaw, who under threat of persecution founded the Burmese publication, the Irrawaddy. And last year's honoree was Tom Wright, whose reports on the affliction of corruption in Asia made huge impact. So tonight we are honored to confer 2021 Shorenstein Awards on Burmese journalist Swe Win, a courageous champion of press freedom, human rights defender, and the chief editor of the bilingual news outlet, Myanmar Now. Having survived an assassination attempt and detention by his own government, he currently leads Myanmar Now from exile, and his newsrooms is in hiding. I know that Swe Win's remarks about his experience and Myanmar's post-coup assaults on the free press will be moving and inspiring. Following his keynote, we will be joined by Eileen Donahoe, Executive Director of the Global Digital Palace Incubator here at Stanford, and Diplomat Scot Marciel, a former US ambassador to Myanmar and currently a visiting fellow at our center. Okay, they will engage in a wide-ranging conversation with Swe Win. We will close tonight's program with a short audience Q&A session, which will be led by Don Emmerson, my colleague, and also Director of Southeast Asia Program at our center. As usual, we invite you to submit brief questions to our honoree and discussants throughout the evening via Zoom Q&A function. Okay, now I'm very pleased to invite Raju Narisetti to introduce our award recipient. Okay, Raju is Global Publishing Director at McKinsey. In a 3-decade career in media, Raju has created, reimagined, and managed major media organizations in North America, Europe, and Asia, and has been on the front lines of digital transformation challenges and opportunities in publishing. So he was a practicing journalist and managing editor at the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. So he founded Mint, India's second largest business news publication, served as a business executive with several digital journalism groups, and was professor of professional practice at Columbia University's School of Journalism. He also serves as a member of our selection committee for the Shorenstein Journalism Award. Thank you so much, Raju, for your contribution. So before he introduces our honoree, I'd like to extend my sincere appreciation to our entire selection committee, which include 4 other experts. So here with us online, Jay Hamilton, Chair of the Department of Communication and Director of the Journalism Program here at Stanford. And 3 other members who couldn't be with us tonight. Wendy Cutler, Vice President and Managing Director of Asia Society Policy Institute, and Philip Pan, Weekend Editor and former Asia Editor of New York Times, and Prashant Parameswaran, Director of Bauer Group Asia and Senior Columnist at the Diplomat. I thank all the committee members for selecting excellent recipients for our journalism award. So now let me turn to Raju for introducing our honoree tonight. Raju.
Thank you, Professor Shin. I want to keep this brief and give you a little bit more color about our honoree tonight, Swe Win. This has been a momentous month for press freedom and speaking truth to power. And as Professor Shin just mentioned, Maria Ressa was one of the 2 Nobel Peace Prize recipients. But the Shorenstein Award has put a spotlight on courageous journalism around the world for a long time. And today's honoree is very much somebody who is deserving of it. He's only 42 and has been editor-in-chief at Myanmar Now, an independent news agency that produces features and investigations both in Burmese and English. And prior to joining that, he set up an independent newspaper, the Yangon Globe, after the junta-era media censorship was lifted in 2012. And prior to that, Swe Win worked for the exile-based Irrawaddy magazine and has been a freelancer for Al Jazeera and the New York Times. That's the official bio. The more compelling story here is that when he was 21, he was put in jail for 7 long years, which included solitary confinement. But when he came out of that, he then did a master's in journalism from the University of Hong Kong and set off on a path of really speaking truth to power, for which he's been recognized by the European Union's Schuman Award for Human Rights in 2017. And in 2019, he was the youngest winner of the Raymond Magsaysay Award for Emergent Leadership. Those of you who know it know that it's the Asian Nobel Prize. And they cited his incorruptible sense of justice and unflinching pursuit of truth, something that he has passionately done at a very heavy price. In 2019, he was shot in an attempted hit that was coordinated by the army chief. And since then has not been able to go back to Myanmar, initially because of the pandemic, and then subsequently because of the coup. Today, Myanmar Now its newsroom is in hiding, and Swe Win manages the newsroom and its journalism in exile. So it's a really great honor and pleasure for all of us that Swe Win has been able to join Professor Shin, over to you to do the official honors.
Okay, so Swe Win, can you see this? So it's really our pleasure to present you with the Shorenstein Journalism Award of 2021. So congratulations, and hopefully we can have in person once pandemic is over. So here we go.
Thank you, Professor Shin.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm going to turn to our honoree to make a keynote speech.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Professor Shin, and all the organizers and everyone who contributed to this event. I'm very honored to be here today. Let me take this opportunity to share a little bit about what happened in our country since February. The military coup in Myanmar early this year put an abrupt end to all our hopes of democracy and liberty. Located right between India and China, our country is rich in land and resources, but long been impoverished by decades of military mismanagement, exploitation, and brutal oppression. We initially opened up to limited democratic reforms in 2011. Just as we experienced such a delicious taste of tiny bit of democracy, we also witnessed enormous, horrible crimes committed against the Muslim minority in our country. When the military junta launched the coup, any political gains that had been made over the past decade were terminated. To justify the attempted seizure of power, the military used the pretext of fraud in November 2020 general elections, in which Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy won a resounding victory. No credible evidence has been provided to support the junta's claims. Actually, the military junta started alleging about the potential vote fraud even before the elections were held, kind of similar to what happened in the United States last year. If it weren't for the strength of the US Constitution and democracy, we cannot imagine how things would be taking place in your part of the world by now. Currently, the military coup council in our country has pledged to hold new elections after an emergency period, which is expected to last at least 2 years. But very few people take these pledges seriously. We see the country not only being thrust back into the previous repressive military state we remember from early years, but also being shaped into a nation not unlike North Korea. Every form of free speech is brutally suppressed now. There is no space left for any form of freedom. But having experienced a brief period of democracy, which we found so delicious, and the universal appeal of democracy, Myanmar's public has responded to the coup with mass protests, a civil disobedience movement in which thousands of government employees refused to go to work, and most recently, a largely youth-led resistance. To date, more than 1,000 civilians have been murdered by the junta, and thousands of people have been incarcerated. One of the major victims of the coup has been the independent press, which emerged as a feature of our country's limited democracy over the past decade. After February 1st, newsrooms were raided. Several publications, including Myanmar Now, which I work for, had their operating license revoked and their websites blocked. Most of the staff of the news outlets targeted by the junta were forced to flee to territories along the country's border areas controlled by ethnic-end organizations. From there, they continued their professional work despite enormous logistic difficulties. Several dozens of journalists have also been arrested. Only a few were released in June, among them a female multimedia reporter from our newsroom, and also a brilliant and good-hearted 37-year-old American journalist called Danny Fenster, who previously worked with Myanmar Now, has been detained in Yangon's insane prison for more than 140 days on grounds that charges that he was inciting against the state, and also he was working for an illegal organization. Currently, news gathering on the ground in Yangon and other parts of the country has been very, very dangerous. There is an unprecedented level of surveillance over journalists' work. The reporters inside the country can no longer identify themselves as being associated with Myanmar Now or with any other banned outlet when they conduct phone or in-person interviews. They now run the risk of being arrested if somebody reports their activity to the military authorities. Soldiers and police in Yangon and major cities of the country have been known to randomly check the mobile phones of civilians and explore their social media accounts and photo galleries. Any criticism of the military junta or even a mere suggestion of sympathies with the resistance movement is easily interpreted as an indication that the individual is a dissident or was a terrorist. An immediate arrest usually follows. The future of Myanmar, or the future of the media in Myanmar, is bleak. State-run news outlets have now become a tool to spread military propaganda. There are no options left for professional reporters to work independently under the junta. The group of reporters and editors who have fled to the country's border now serve as the major backbone of our day-to-day news operations. Private media back inside the country who are still able to legally operate now appear to be faced with two options: avoid criticism of the junta or spread the military propaganda in either obvious or nuanced ways. Over the past decade, we have been eagerly waiting and working for the day when we could finally shed all the remnants of the military dictatorship from our lives. But now, we are back in the darkness again, but we remain very much positive about our future. This is an opportunity for greater and better changes in our country, we strongly believe. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Don Emmerson. I run the Southeast Asia program at the Shorenstein Asia Pacific Research Center. We're fortunate to have today two discussants, former ambassadors with professional expertise on human rights abroad. Eileen Donahoe served in the Obama administration as the first U.S. ambassador to the UN Human Rights Council. After leaving public service, she joined Human Rights Watch as Director of Global Affairs. Her many advisory positions include service on the board of directors of the National Endowment for Democracy, the Transatlantic Commission on Election Integrity, and the World Economic Forum Global Future Council on the digital economy. In one of her publications, Donahoe asks, who should be in charge of reversing the troubling developments in our global digital spaces? And what, if anything, can be done to let society keep reaping the benefits of these technologies while protecting it against the risks? Answering those and related questions is her task as the head of the Global Digital Policy Incubator here at Stanford's Cyber Policy Center, which studies human rights and democratic values in digitized societies. Scot Marciel, a career diplomat with 35 years of experience in Asia, served as U.S. ambassador to Myanmar from 2016 to 2020. During that assignment, Scot got to know today's award recipient, Swe Win, who was highly regarded for his courage and integrity as a founding editor of Myanmar Now. Prior to Scot's time in Yangon, he served as ambassador to Indonesia and ambassador for ASEAN affairs in diplomatic roles in Vietnam and the Philippines, among other Asian assignments, and in various State Department positions in Washington. As a visiting practitioner fellow at Stanford, Scot recently wrote a book, but examines U.S. relations with Southeast Asia in light of his years of experience there. It is in the process of being published by the Asia Pacific Research Center under the title Imperfect Partners, the United States and Southeast Asia. All right, having introduced Eileen and Scott, I'd like to turn it over to Eileen. Eileen, do you have any responses to Swe Win's remarks? Any questions for him or comments that you would like to make?
So many responses and comments, but I just wanted to start on in a very personal vein by saying thank you for including me. It is a real honor to be part of the celebration of Swe Win. Just because his story is such an example of courage and really awe-inspiring. He also happens to be a grantee of the NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, where you mentioned I serve on the board. And I can convey that he is a perfect embodiment of exactly the type of civil society leader that the NED strives to support. And the message to Swe Win tonight from NED is that you make the entire NED family very proud just to be in this business of supporting journalists, democracy advocates around the world. The second thing I can't not mention is that it's meaningful to be here just because this is such a beautiful tribute to the legacy of Walter Shorenstein and helping keep his priorities alive. He was a friend of mine and a compatriot in all kinds of political activities. And I have so many vivid memories of him in these thought-provoking foreign policy salons, et cetera. And I just want to say how proud I know Walter would be that APARC has selected Swe Win as the recipient at this 20th anniversary. So that's important. Beyond all of that, Ned, Walter, this is a really meaningful event, but also very humbling to me to be included because I think of myself as a human rights advocate and a defender of free expression and democracy, but obviously in a very different vein than Swe Win. His experience shows that being a journalist and just reporting on what's happening in places like Myanmar has become the highest risk type of human rights advocacy anywhere in the world today. My experience as an advocate has been so different, and in particular, so much safer. I will say the most relevant aspect of my experience as a human rights advocate in relation to this event was, as you mentioned, I served as U.S. Ambassador to the Human Rights Council in Geneva. And it happened to be during that period when Burma, Myanmar, looked like it might really be transitioning to become a functioning democracy. And I remember Secretary of State Hillary Clinton making a very symbolic visit to Burma in 2011 to encourage progress in what then appeared to be a real transition. That was the first visit by a US Secretary of State to Burma in more than 50 years. And the following year, President Obama made his historic visit. And that was the first time any US president had visited the country. So it was a it was a moment of incredible hope and optimism that lasting change was happening before our eyes. I can vividly recall a particular diplomatic event in a giant plenary hall in Geneva where Aung San Suu Kyi spoke so elegantly and captivated that audience. The entire diplomatic community was completely enchanted by her. And obviously here we are today. The trajectory since that time has changed 180 degrees, especially in the context of the gruesome toll of the coup this year. So it's incredibly inspiring, but also disheartening to recognize how much we can go backwards in just a decade of time. Last point I want to make is really that just in the reason this is so humbling to me is that, as I sit in this perch from Stanford now, and I previously serving as a multilateral diplomat and even at Human Rights Watch in an international organization, being a human rights advocate is nothing in my experience, compared to the work of journalists and human rights activists on the front lines today in these crisis situations. And I have to underscore the example of courage, and both moral courage to dare to report the truth, but also physical courage to take on that risk of physical injury. And so I just want to say how inspiring it is. And I'm so pleased to be part of honoring Swe Win tonight. And I really look forward to getting into the conversation about especially the role of digital technology in the coup and even in the genocide against the Rohingya in the earlier years.
Thank you very much. Scott, would you like to join the conversation?
Thanks very much, Don. And congratulations, Swe Win. As you said, Don, I had a chance, I had the good fortune to get to know Swe Win in my time in Myanmar. And as Eileen said, no better example of courage, but courage in the physical sense, but also incredible integrity combined with excellent journalistic skills. And even before the coup, despite the opening, being a journalist in Myanmar wasn't easy and wasn't always safe. And in fact, the last conversation that I think Swe Win and I had together in Yangon was about a particular incident where he was, his life and health were very much in jeopardy because of his reporting. And I should say the culprit there was the military, not the Aung San Suu Kyi government. If I could, in addition to congratulating Swe Win for this really richly deserved honor, I'd like to just put this coup and what's happened to Myanmar in a slightly broader regional context, because I think that's important as well. As Eileen said, I arrived in Myanmar at the sort of the tail end of that very hopeful period where things seem to be moving in a very positive direction. We're moving in a very positive direction. And unfortunately, that trajectory has, turned south, particularly since the coup. But what it means for the region and for the United States is also really important. Obviously, the focus rightly has been on the suffering and the lost opportunity and the lost freedom for the Myanmar people. But more broadly, other countries in the region, as well as the United States, are profoundly impacted by what's happening. If you look at the region, Myanmar is a member of ASEAN, one of the 10 ASEAN states. And this coup and this completely, absolutely not credible, not legitimate coup, not that there's a lot of legitimate coups, but this one was especially egregious. And the incredible brutality of the military since the coup, and the rise of a national resistance to the coup among the Myanmar people, has created a huge problem for ASEAN, because one of its member states has gone rogue, gone really wayward, and ASEAN's struggling to try to figure out how to solve this problem, and so far they've been unable to. Not that it's an easy problem to solve, but it's really harming and undermining ASEAN and highlighting the splits among the ASEAN members. Second, the two giants that Swe Win mentioned, India and China on their border. I certainly can't speak for either of their governments, but this coup has also put them in I think a situation that they probably don't like very much. My guess is that the Chinese authorities are not thrilled with this coup because, among other things, it's created massive instability. The coup has not succeeded in the sense that the military has not been able to really attain control of the country and to govern the country. And so the military is presiding over a very difficult, not only a difficult humanitarian situation, but massive instability. And it's not likely to be able to restore stability. And that's not good for Myanmar's big neighbors either. And I have to think they're very concerned about it. India as well, which has sort of gone along with the coup, but given India's own politics, there's been a lot of debate in India about this as well. And for the United States, we've long been strong supporters of the idea of democracy and federalism so that the ethnic minorities in Myanmar feel like they're treated as equals in the country. Needless to say, the coup's been a huge setback for us. So I think this problem, like most problems, has to be solved largely inside the country. Foreign countries will have a limited role, but I think it's really important that we all recognize the magnitude of this. We recognize the amazing courage and the unity of the Myanmar people against this coup. And we do everything we can to support the people like Swe Win, many other journalists, civil society members, and others who are fighting for freedom, democracy, and also for opportunity. And also to recognize that just playing the old realpolitik and saying, well, coup's not great, but we'll go along with it, is a recipe for disaster too, because you're not going to get stability. You're not going to get peace. You're going to have continuing problems, not only in the country, but emanating from the country. So I think this award is a reminder that there's a lot of people in Myanmar, millions of people in Myanmar, who are sacrificing greatly and contributing to an effort to return the country. No, I wouldn't even say return the country, to move the country back onto that positive trajectory that I know we want, and that more importantly, the overwhelming majority of people in the country want. I'll stop there.
Thank you. All right, let me see if I can just raise a couple of questions here that might stimulate some discussion. I think we're operating on two levels. That is, what's going on inside Myanmar, and then the regional and international context. They're related, but they're distinct. And I guess this is a question for you, Swe Win, if you can reply. It's a little awkward to discuss Myanmar now, given the clandestine character of the journalism that you're producing. And obviously, I don't want you to further endanger either yourself or your colleagues by any revelation that would be, resulting in insecurity. I note on the website, let me just quote from the website, the Myanmar Now website. Myanmar Now's website says that the service provides an independent service, that's important, that provides free, accurate, and unbiased, 3 adjectives, free, accurate, and unbiased news to the people of Myanmar in Burmese and English. Now, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you manage the difficult task of making sure that you have accuracy and you do not have bias, because it seems to me that activist journalism, and there's tension between the adjective and the noun, activist journalism, right? How do you escape the problem of adopting a position and therefore no longer really reporting because you're advocating? And the tension between the two, I'm sure, is probably better known by you than just about anybody else I can think of, given what you're doing. So how do you manage accuracy and objectivity in these extraordinary, dangerous, and difficult times? How do you do it? What's the secret of your success?
By independence, we mean we are not working under the influence of any organization or any entity. This is what we mean by independence. So Myanmar Now actually receives funding from international organizations, including NAD, but we don't have any arrangement, editorial arrangement to produce something actually, in a certain way or certain format, nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we mean by independence. So even though, for example, my background is, I'm a former prisoner or political prisoner, let's say actually, if you say political prisoner, I think it is not quite reflected of what's going on in our society, because at the corner of every road, someone has been thrown into jail for something by the military junta. For example, when I was in prison, I saw a man who was jailed for donating a few chat actually, to a few chat to a monk actually, and then a man has the loudspeaker, a loudspeaker. So the man said, "Okay, what should I speak on the loudspeaker for your donation. Say, may Aung San Suu Kyi be happy. So then the man said, the exact thing on the loudspeaker. And then the man was jailed, actually, for 7 years, So in my case, actually, we were not actually, I never regard ourselves as political activists or anything like that, actually. We were just opposing, actually, the brutal rule, the unjust rule, in any possible way we can. But we never think that this is political, actually, in a general sense, we are doing what we got to do, actually, everyone I saw, actually, tricycle driver, taxi driver, vegetable sellers, or doubters and authors, many people from all walks of life have been thrown into jail. And the same case to me as well, actually, I participated in a student protest. At the time, Aung San Suu Kyi was on a solo hunger strike at the outskirts of Yangon. She was released from her house arrest, and then she was trying to leave Yangon for regional areas for her party activities. She was prevented. And then I felt a great sympathy for her. Actually, I never cared about, the iconic Aung San Suu Kyi, actually. I never much, actually, attracted by the halo, surrounding Aung San Suu Kyi, like many members of our society. But just a woman, actually, fighting against a group of powerful army generals. That's what pushed me, actually, to the street. The same thing, actually, all the negative forces push us, actually, to this opposition against the military junta. The same thing, actually, but in our journalism, actually, we try to remove aside, actually, all our personal, personal philosophy as much as possible, because journalism to us is more of a science, actually, more of an objective scientific exercise, actually. And then the power of the journalism lies, actually, in the truth, in the truth, So that is the power of the journalism, in the facts, So that is what is driving us, Sometimes there are assumptions or impressions that just because I'm a former political prisoner, so the news organization which I'm in charge of is an activist journalist organization. It's nothing like that, I feel there is a lot of meaning for any kind of good activism, but we're trying to leave aside as much activism as possible out of our work, and let the facts, tell the story. Let the actual stories tell the story. But it's not just plain neutralism. It's not just, there are hundreds of stories. There are thousands of stories. We should really care about, people's crimes, people's sufferings. We should really care about who is fighting for what, all these values. We cannot just say, oh, we will just stay neutral, and then, do our work, in a normal way. You cannot do that, actually. Thank you.
Let me ask you a very specific question, and forgive me, I want to get back to the discussants as well, but let me ask you a very specific question. It has been widely reported, and you mentioned this in your remarks, that over 1,000 civilians have been killed by the junta. Now, it's interesting, as I go through Myanmar now, and I look at the reporting, you're very careful, as far as I can tell, not to give specific figures. I mean, obviously, the question here is that figure of 1,000 plus reliable? And if so, where does it come from? And how do you deal with the difficulty of trying to obtain factual evidence? For example, we could turn that around. We know that by now, the original peaceful intentions of civil disobedience have been substantially replaced by armed action on the part of the resistance. And so that raises the question of the casualties that the resistance has experienced. And also the casualties that it has delivered, it has produced with regard to those in the Tatmadaw, in the military, who have been killed. And there is reporting evidence that, you know, bombs are going off periodically, that the resistance is managing to kill a number of the regime, particularly of the military. So how do you handle a question like that? It's a factual question, right? How many people have died and who's been killing whom, right? I mean, I know that's a very difficult and rather bloody subject, but how do you cover that? How do you determine the truth about casualties?
Yeah, there are many, occasions we cannot cover just because we cannot confirm, So, but most of the reporting we have done, this is this can from our reporting, from our verification efforts, But for regarding 1,000 civilians that you will, this comes from an organization called Association of Political Prisoners in Myanmar. It's a credible organization. It's called AAPP, as you will, which cares about the welfare of the political prisoners, as you will,
Mm-hmm.
So this is a credible organization. This has a long history, as you will. We've been operating for so long, as you will. Not just because this is an organization which is, in the opposition against the junta. We have carefully followed their figures, we have used their data, as you will, over the past year, and then we found this is a credible organization.
Okay, good, right. And what about the digital aspect? Eileen raised this, and of course, that's part of her background. Could you do what you're doing now if it weren't for the internet? And how important is the internet? Or do you worry, for example, about cybersecurity? Are people tapping in to your networks? What roughly, if you can speak without revealing any secrets, what is the role of the internet in your effort?
It is playing a massive role, actually. I think the role of the digital, leave aside, actually, journalism, the role of the digital itself, actually, digital platform is playing the number one role, actually, a key primary role, in sustaining the resistance movement, and also about also countering against the propaganda of the military junta at a national scale, So, for example, like 15 years ago, actually, in Myanmar, many people didn't even have mobile phones, actually. Now, most people, actually, almost all the people have now their mobile phone. They have access to Facebook. They have access to internet, actually. In my experience, we saw the coup in 1988, and then after 6 months or a year, actually, people calmed down. People calmed down. People even started believing the propaganda of the military junta, actually. This is not the case in the 21st century. The junta is now trying very hard, but unsuccessfully against the digital media by blogging the website, by blogging the social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook. But that is not working out. People, including the tricycle drivers, have learned how to use BPM, actually, to bypass the blockages. So the digital platform are playing the number one role, actually, in the fight against the military dictatorship.
Fair enough. Fair enough. There's a question from the audience that I'd like to pass on, and it concerns Aung San Suu Kyi, who, of course, was the state councilor before the junta occurred on the 1st of February. And the question is one that I've often thought about, and perhaps, Swe Win, you could comment, and perhaps also the discussants. Why did Aung San Suu Kyi basically support the government's brutal treatment of the Rohingya? I mean, Aung San Suu Kyi was for long, particularly by outsiders, thought to be you know, I mean, it was a kind of reducing Myanmar to a single individual. She was the heroine. And she disappointed a lot of people when she actually had the power, which she didn't have, of course, before, by, instead of defending the Rohingya, in a way, going along with the treatment that had been given to them. And I could go into those details, and I'm sure that you know them better than I do. So from your point of view, Swe Win, are you disappointed in Aung San Suu Kyi? And if one were to overthrow this government, would she be the logical choice to lead a democratic Myanmar? Or has the disappointment become so grave that no, the resistance would prefer to have someone else? That's a question for Swe Win.
I think, yeah, I agree actually, you know. I think I'm not sure to what extent Aung San Suu Kyi supported the ethnic cleansing or, you know, genocide against the Rohingya. But we cannot but agree, you know, with the fact that she was complicit, you know, she was complicit in these events, actually, you know, by the way she approached, you know, these issues during those days, actually, you know. For example, the most astounding thing was, you know, two writers, journalists, local journalists were thrown into jail for trying to cover a massacre of the Rohingya villagers. And then Aung San Suu Kyi was mocking them. You know, she was attending the World Economic Forum in Vietnam. That was the day these two journalists were sentenced to 7 years in jail for violation of State Secret Act, the same charge Aung San Suu Kyi is now faced on. Aung San Suu Kyi was mocking these two journalists. They were jailed just because they violated the law. If they were not happy with the sentence, they can appeal. That's sort of a behavior, actually, you know. Sometimes we try to think, you know, she might have many difficult, you know, reasons, actually, you know, to choose a particular political pusher. I understand, you know, that very difficult, you know. You have to work with the tigers or with the snakes, actually, you know, with the enemies, actually, you know, who can cave you and who can stop this democratic trend at any point. So sometimes we were thinking, for the benefit, for the sake of the welfare of the, you know, democracy, or for the sake of the major population, Aung San Suu Kyi was sacrificing her moral, actually, you know, her moral stance, you know.
Right.
So, but actually, you know, there are occasions where she revealed, actually, you know, her complicity in the mistreatment of the Rohingyas.
Right. Let's move to the. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I've obviously been too reticent. I feel like I want to go back to multiple strands.
Go right ahead. Go right ahead.
A quick comment on your first and second question to Swe Win, which was, you know, you asked, how does he balance accuracy and objectivity with the role of being activist journalist in the context of a military coup or a crisis or a genocide? And I heard in his answer something that I think is a really, it could be an interesting lesson for the United States and the challenges we currently face in our culture. Because in effect, I heard him say, we report on what is objectively unjust. And that idea is exactly what we have lost in our culture, where we don't trust in media. We don't believe in truth. We don't believe there's an objective way to assess what is unjust. And that is a tremendous loss. And I will connect it both to the geopolitics and the technology front, which is, I look back at the moment of the 2016 election in the United States, where there was a Russian information operations via social media and technology. They didn't actually have to hack anything. Like, well, they hacked the email and then used it, they weaponized the information, but they didn't have to hack election infrastructure or the voting and actually undermine the integrity of the vote count. They just had to undermine confidence among the American people in the integrity of the vote. And in that sense, it reminds me of a work by another journalist, Peter Pomerantsev, who wrote a book about the media culture in Russia called Nothing is True, Everything is Possible, where the goal is not to prove that you are correct. The goal is to prove that nobody's correct. Everyone's corrupt. Nobody can count on anything. And my observation is the United States is currently in this terrible position where we have become a culture where nothing is true. And so in that sense, Myanmar is so far ahead, having journalists with the integrity of Swe Win and the confidence to say, I am objectively reporting on what is unjust. And then you also have this culture of civil disobedience that is also really remarkable. Second question you asked, which him was about the role of the internet. Would his work today even be possible? And I really appreciate that because we have become so preoccupied with the dark side of the internet and the downside risk of connectivity. And we do have to hold on to that other side of the equation, which is human rights activists, journalists depend on the internet and digital technologies to do their work. The problem is, so do the malign actors. And the same tools that serve very beneficial purposes in society are now being weaponized. And unfortunately, that's the big geopolitical trend where we see a global, downward spiral toward what I would call digital authoritarianism. And we focus a lot on the example of China in Asia. We focus on Russia, both of which are very fascinating cases, and we could get into more about that. But Myanmar itself is a gigantic data point in the dark side of technology, both in the genocide and the extent to which Facebook, in particular, social media platforms, played a gargantuan role in facilitating that genocide. And they're still trying to get themselves out of it today, and we could go down that hole. But also in the coup, where it wasn't so much or only about manipulation of media and propaganda by social media. It was more about straight up internet shutdowns and destroying the prospect of communication in the entire culture, shutting down journalists, websites, et cetera, and also military grade hacking tools that they had purchased over the previous years under the guise of we're moving toward democracy. So in that sense, I feel like, Larry Diamond and I pay a lot of attention to China, and many people at Stanford pay a lot of attention to Russia and the dark role of digital technology there and digital authoritarianism. But Myanmar itself is like the poster child of some very dark moments when it comes to digital technology. And the only thing I can say is he's a bright spot, in terms of the connection to technology and what it's facilitating in terms of the work for Swe Win and Myanmar now.
Yeah. Looking forward, Scott, how would you like to comment on this? The Asean Summit, scheduled for the 26th to the 28th of October, is going to face a decision. Will General Liang, right, the head of the junta, will he attend and represent Myanmar, which will simply worsen the argument that many people have already made that ASEAN really is a club of dictators. And if, in fact, Myanmar is represented at the summit, will the United States attend anyway? Can you possibly imagine, even presumably, it would not be in person. I assume it would be online, but still that, Biden would be sitting at a table with Min Aung Hlaing, the head of this blood-stained regime. How do you think that's going to pan out? Do you have any thoughts on that, Scott?
Thanks, Don. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, this coup and the aftermath really has put ASEAN in a quandary, and I think highlighted again one of ASEAN's weaknesses. And as a big fan of ASEAN, I look for opportunities to support and praise ASEAN. But here you've got some member states of ASEAN who've been highly critical of the coup, and others who've kind of gone along with it and said, well, you know, in ASEAN, we don't interfere in each other's domestic affairs. You know, recently there's been some discussions. I think the Malaysian foreign minister spoke out and said, you know, it's going to be a problem if General Min Aung Hlaing wants to attend. But ASEAN makes decisions by consensus. So far they have not been able to really get a consensus on this issue. So I certainly hope that they find a way not to have Min Aung Hlaing there, but I wouldn't predict that. I just don't know. As for the United States, as you know, I still am employed by the U.S. Department of State, so I won't get into making policy recommendations for the government I work for in public. But what I would say is this: that if I'm looking at it, you have to remember that Southeast. I mean, Don, I don't have to tell you, Southeast Asia is really important to the United States, and so no American president is going to want to be at a table with Min Aung Hlaing, virtually or otherwise. However, do we want to give the generals the power to, you know, get in the way of our relationship with a region of 660 million people? So there's no good answers here. But I think kind of, you know, saying, well, if you have a coup and, you know, or a brutal dictator, then you will basically stop the United States from engaging your neighbors at the presidential level. That's also problematic. So I wonder if there's not ways, and I'm sure people in Washington are looking at this very carefully, to have the appropriate representation at ASEAN meetings as we've done to date, while making it very clear in our public statements and presumably in the meeting are very strong views. And the United States has been very strong, you know, outspoken, as you know, condemning the coup and very clearly on the side of the Myanmar people. And I think there are ways to do that.
I want to jump in and mention another summit. It's not just the ASEAN summit where the US can play a role. The Biden administration is planning this summit for democracies at the December 9th and 10th. And there's no question that the administration, I don't work for the government anymore. I'm happy to spout what I think that they should embrace as their values. I think the Biden administration has put democracy and human rights sort of as at the forefront of foreign policy, but they've been bogged down in so many other things. It hasn't quite shown up yet. And but I think that the basic purpose of that summit is to do exactly what Swe Win talked about, which is to raise up the relevance, the geopolitical relevance of values and the strategic value for national security, rather than seeing, you know, you care about norms after you take care of your national security. And I think that they are really intentionally trying to do that. And I am pushing them to see the values dimension of digital technology policy as part of that strategic agenda. One of the things, you know, I think we could do is try to make the case of Myanmar, the coup, as a focal point of that summit, an example at that summit.
This is a country going forward in the direction of further democratization. Our goal of democracy is not just the standard of Singapore or Hong Kong, even Hong Kong. You know, it's more than that actually. You know, so they know actually. You know, this is the people who will not be contented with just the material benefits of a, you know, sort of functional, you know, market, you know, a society like Hong Kong or Singapore. I will say actually, we will not be content. You know, we will not be content. We have shown, you know, we have shown our limit actually. You know, we have shown where we want to go actually. You know, So the Chinese government knows very, very well about these democratic sentiments, about the extent of our aspirations. So they would not rather have, a country like this, as you will, going farther and farther down the democratic road. We cannot forget that since 2011, after Myanmar transition to limited democracy, China has experienced many kinds of hurdles, hurdles and embarrassment, as you will, in relation with Myanmar. Many of their investments, met with open opposition by the locals, local members of parliaments, etc. As you will, So this is an opportunity for any authoritarian state to abuse again, to take advantage of this, chaos for their economic and political benefit.
If I could ask you, Eileen, following up on your comment, do you think that the Summit for Democracy in December should actually launch an initiative with regard to digital journalism and how the digital aspect can be enlisted in an effort to, shore up the term objectivity that Swe Win used and that you used as well, so that, we don't export the kind of nihilistic, nobody knows the truth, it doesn't exist sort of attitude that is, as you point out, developing here in the United States. Is that something that the US government should get involved with?
Yes. And I will say through funding the NED, it is involved in things like that. I can tell you my impression of what I know so far of what is the tech agenda at the summit. And I must admit, I don't think that the problem of disinformation and digitized propaganda is going to be front and center at the summit. And the reason, I think what's really going to happen, first of all, that whole space could take over the whole summit. There's so much complexity to that topic, but I do think it's, a really important area. And I do think the US has to invest more in that. I think that's happening at the State Department, like the Global Engagement Center, et cetera. As I understand it, the three pillars at the summit are combating authoritarianism, combating kleptocracy, and protecting human rights. Obviously, all of those very relevant to the case of Myanmar, and digital technology runs throughout those three pillars. As of now, I think that the way they're focusing on the role of digital technology, though, is what is a comprehensive plan to combat the spread of the digital authoritarian model, the entire techno-social system being spread, largely like China as the poster child of that, being spread through export of technology, export of information infrastructure, diffusion of ideas and concepts about cyber sovereignty, and just role modeling the use of digital technologies for repression. That's one big piece. The second big piece is, what does it look like at home to govern digital technologies, to utilize data and technologies in ways that's consistent with our values and adhere to international human rights law and principles. And then the third piece is actually the technology challenge itself. It's winning the technology battle against the authoritarians. And that may seem counterintuitive, that if you think of technology as only the problem, you'd say, well, that's not what we're doing. But actually, there's a recognition that dominance in the technology is part of how authoritarians are spreading their values and gaining power, whether it's military power in the Asia Pacific or economic power in sub-Saharan Africa, or normative power in all of the international norms arenas when it comes to tech standard setting or norms about use of technology. And so those are the three buckets that I'm aware of. That said, I do think this idea of what is objective, what counts as objective journalism is a really thorny issue, and the administration's aware of it. And I can tell you many people at Stanford are working on that exact problem, including Renee DiResta, who I was with this afternoon just before coming onto this video.
Yeah, I guess a more practical sort of, I understand that, and it's a critical issue, absolutely critical. But isn't there some way that one can help, not just Swe Win and Myanmar Now, but others in Myanmar and other authoritarian countries to develop the kind of journalism that you're talking about? And of course, this runs the risk immediately when a foreign country provides assistance, then the local authoritarian says, well, you sold out to the foreigner, so we're going to arrest you because you're unpatriotic. I mean, that's a real problem. But is there some way that we can get something more specific? Because my impression is, frankly, that, actually journalism is really kind of the last defense of democracy. I mean, I know we want to have, fair elections, and we want to have legislatures that, are not just, creatures and playthings of the dictator. But it seems to me that journalists are an absolutely critical element in this equation. And is there some way that we could help Myanmar and other situations like that? Or would that, I don't know. What do you think?
I'm sorry to tell you, I think the problem goes way beyond journalism. And it is actually a general erosion of confidence in the meaning of truth and the meaning of objectivity writ large. And we do not have a shared understanding of base facts anymore in this country, in the United States of America. And that is a really ominous, reality for the future of our democracy. So all I can say is this is where we almost need an epistemological shift, where we get back to a different understanding of the nature of truth, almost at an abstract level, rather than just seeing it through a politically polarized lens. And I do think, obviously, social media and the idea of engagement with social media has really undermined the idea that there's a difference between objectively true and high quality journalism and garbage that gets the attention and attracts eyeballs. And that has really had a devastating effect on journalism around the world. But I do think it's a bigger issue than just journalism.
Yeah, fair enough. Scott, do you want to comment on this and maybe link back to perhaps some aspect of the Myanmar situation that we haven't explored yet?
Yeah, I absolutely understand and agree with Eileen, although she's much more expert on it than I do. But I think in the case of Myanmar, it is really important to offer support and training as much as possible to the independent media. I think independent media groups like Myanmar Now do have a lot of credibility among many people in Myanmar, and certainly the United States has been at the forefront of offering training and opportunities and so on. But I think Swe Win's best place to say what would be helpful.
Swe Win, what do you think? What would be helpful? Question.
Dom and also Eileen talk about this, the difficult situation in the United States. But let me share our thoughts as outsiders. We are never actually, we never feel depressed about the situation in the United States. You talk about the state of nihilism actually, So, this never affected us actually, affected our impression of the United States and the civil societies, and etc. For example, we are so much impressed actually, by how the United States political system continue to work, no matter how flawed it is. We are so much impressed actually, you have the best journalism on the world actually, but you may be depressed actually, about your own country's media situation. You have the best media in the world actually, For example, I don't know actually, the New York Times is the best newspaper in the world, actually, you know. So something like that, these powerful, actually, you know, you have some of the best educational institutions in the world. So educational institutions and media are, you know, they are closely linked with each other, actually, you know, and they are backed by the democracy, you know, these basic democratic functions, actually. Without these three things, actually, you know, you cannot work, actually. Journalism, as Eileen said, is now, you know, or Don said, actually, is the only remaining, you know, remaining defender of the US. I don't agree with that, actually, you know, as an outsider, actually, you know, without democracy, what kind of journalism, you know, can play, can play out, actually, you know, can we have, you know, without freedom of information, you know, without proper justice system, what sort of information we can expect, you know? So as an outsider, actually, we are not depressed at all, you know? But so I think there are many things, actually, you know, you can offer, not just to Myanmar, actually, you know, to people or communities who are struggling for greater, you know, democracy and freedoms.
Okay, all right. Well, I think the time is passing and we probably should bring this to a close. But just, are there any brief comments, very brief comments that anyone would like to make before we close it?
I would love to underscore the point Scott made, the simple truth. Yes, there are opportunities to fund independent media in Myanmar, and that's the right thing to do, notwithstanding this very complex problem with disinformation and trust in the information realm. And second point is just to say it is a mystery, but it is a wonderful thing to observe the confidence and optimism in Swe Win. And this idea, I think he said, that we in Myanmar, our standard of democracy is higher. It's not as functional related to capitalism and the economy as in Hong Kong or Singapore. We aspire to something else. And I think whatever it is that is supporting a culture that is yearning for that type of democracy is sort of the secret for all of us.
Fair enough, fair enough. Scott, quick comment?
Very brief. I just want to bring it back to Swe Win and, you know, say I have long admired you and your courage and your journalism, but also what you represent, which is so many people in your country who are willing to sacrifice far beyond anything I've ever had to sacrifice for my country to bring about a better future. And that's the one thing that makes me optimistic about Myanmar. So congratulations to you.
And that's, of course, the main point. Congratulations. Swe Win, any brief comment? We just have a few seconds here before we're going to have to go.
Thank you very much, Scott and Eileen, and, you know, everyone. You know, what I want to say is actually, you know, you may be depressed, you know, about our country, or about any other authoritarian state like, you know, Afghan but we are not depressed, actually, you know. We feel that we are always winning, right, as long as we are with the truth, actually, you know, as long as we are with the truth, you know, we are always winning, right, you know. So once we miss the truth, actually, we become losers, you know, in any game or at any stage of life. We are winners. We are very happy, actually, you know. We are so much happy, you know. People might be, you know, saying, oh, a lot of depressing things about our country, you know. Nothing like that, actually. We are all, and also we move forward, not with the hatred, actually, you know. There is a lot of injustice, but, you know, we assert it, actually, and we move forward, not with this hatred, actually, you know. Yeah. Just with the desire, you know, to prove things, actually, you know, for ourselves and for our enemies, you know. We even want to extend our support, actually, to those in similar situations. Once we get out of our own quagmire, actually, you know, we are always happy and optimistic inside.
Well, that's inspiring. That's a very inspiring note on which to pass the the microphone to Giwook, who's going to wrap us up. Thank you so much, Swe Win, and congratulations on your receipt of the award. Giwook?
Okay, thanks, Don, Eileen, and Scott. And I really appreciate your optimism, Swe Win. And our conversation today is very touching for me personally, because I grew up in Korea, who had a military coups, dictatorship, but we continue to fight for democracy to achieve a liberal democracy and advanced country. And in the process, support from international community was very important. So I hope that we all can work together to achieve more freedom and democracy in your country. And congratulations again, and stay strong and successful on the path ahead. So once again, I'd like to thank our committee members and our panelists, and also Shorenstein family, and then our staff, especially our communication team led by Noah Rankin and Denise and other people. So congratulations again, and let's stay optimistic, and hopefully we can bring you to campus once things get better. So thank you so much for joining us, and then see you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.